Hey guys, I'm really excited to share with you this interview that I did with Michael Winn. He's been one of my main teachers and he's quite a legend within the Taoist community. So just a heads up, like many Taoist masters, Michael lives in a nature retreat and so his internet connection wasn't very good. So the video does lag and kind of cut out in the last part of the interview and the audio kind of skips here and there. But overall, it's some really great information. You're going to really enjoy this interview. Hey guys, I'm Jonathan White, and I got a very special guest with me today, Michael Winn, who's been one of my main teachers and has been quite a pioneer in bringing the Taoist arts to the West. He literally wrote the book on Taoist sexual cultivation, and has been a very pivotal role in bringing these arts to the West. So, welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Do you want to just give a little background about yourself, like specifically, your story getting into the Taoist practices, how you, because I know you explored a lot of different backgrounds, but what was it that brought you to the Taoist path and exploring Taoist sexual cultivation and all these things?
And at that time, I had already opened up my Kundalini through some breathing practices. I wasn't really looking for anything new. I was having a whole body sexual experience, is what Kundalini is. It's like actually your sexual energy going up the spine to the brain very quickly, 24 hours a day. So you're kind of in like a totally blissed out state, but my testicles were pulsing. And so I knew it was like some type of accelerated use of my sexual energy. But I didn't realize it was also depleting my kidneys and like I was robbing my body. And it was all like kind of uploading into some energy body, which I had no awareness of. And so it wasn't until I started studying Taoist methods that I actually got a practical handle on what was going on and had a map, started to develop a map. It took me many decades actually to get a clear map, but I started to get grounded and hold my energy field back in and contain the energy so it wasn't all escaping out my head, because most Kundalini people are just going up the spine, up the head, and the energy, the chi is just leaking out. So I was actually gradually getting sexually weaker. I was transmuting all the sexual energy into another body, but it was just dispersing. So the Taoist practices taught me how to recycle that energy and capture it. But it would still be, like I said, I've come a long way since then, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And it took me a long time to realize the role of sexual energy within the alchemical process is basically one of the, how do you accelerate your evolution? Mm. So everybody is on a path of alchemy. I mean, nature is transforming season by season, day into night, winter into summer. I mean, we're in a sea of transformation all the time. And so everybody is involved in what would be described as an alchemical process. But internal alchemy is the science of consciously accelerating the natural process of alchemy. And so the first stage of that is to get a map of your energy body and certain important channels, how you open them up. And the second stage is to actually learn how to manage your sexual energy. And then the third stage is how to create an internal sexual coupling process, I would say, as a very thumbnail sketch.
So the Taoists have a very specific approach to working with sexual energy that makes it quite different from other systems, for example, Tantra and these other systems. And do you want to give just a bit of an overview of your understanding of Taoist sexology and sexual cultivation, how someone can use that to improve their health, improve their overall fulfillment and success in life?
I've written a 42-page article, which I submitted for a Taoist and Tantric Scholars Conference at Harvard. It's on my website. It's called Quest for Spiritual Orgasm, about Taoism and Tantric arriving in the West. And it points out, well, I'll just summarize it instead of reading all 42 pages to you. It points out that the Taoist and the Tantric philosophies are very similar. They're both saying, look, accept what is, work with it in your body, transform it, okay, into a higher spiritual state. But they use very different methods. So the Taoist methods and the tantric methods are completely different. The tantric tend to use a lot of mantra. You know, they have a chakra system, which I studied also extensively. But the Western Tantra is a very superficial version of Indian Tantra. And it was invented by Rajneesh, later who changed his name to Osho. And Tantra was designed to help Westerners liberate and accept their sexual energy. I think he was very successful in that. But Rajneesh or Osho himself had no actually training in methods. He was just kind of a psychologically brilliant, you know, and spiritually brilliant guy. He was a philosophy professor, and you know, he just kind of channeled everything and made it up. So the Taoist tradition is coming from thousands of years of refinement of these techniques, and very elaborate body map of that how to activate various organ and deep channels and direct sexual energy into it and capture it. So the net effect is that I have seen most of the Western tantrics, and a number of them, of course, have come to study with me, and because they usually eventually end up getting a little bit frustrated because they can't go far enough. They can't get deeper. So the tantrics, you know, they play with a lot of kind of psychological pairing, male and female. I mean, they do a lot of Western tantrics. They try to integrate it into Western psychology, and it's all good. I support them. I consider them to be allies. But if you look at the tantrics who've been in that movement for 20, 30 years, they're all white-haired at 55. They've been ejaculating, you know, nonstop. They've depleted their essence. Their Hindu term is called ohas, and the Taoists call it jing. And, you know, I don't see them having an increased lifespan at all. They've kind of, they're celebrating sexuality, but they're not really capturing the essence of it in a way that will sustain the longevity and their creativity to a higher level. So, movement for a long time. I'm a 60-year-old kid. I'm planning to have another kid. I've got a lot of energy.
Yeah.
You know, and I need to sleep 4 hours a night. You know, my hair hasn't turned white. You know, it used to be flaming red. Yeah, okay, it's not flaming red anymore. I mean, there's some signs of it. But basically, recycling my sexual energy has been a key practice, and maintaining really great health. I have not had health insurance for 40 years. I rely upon myself and my own practice to maintain my good health. You know, I just not invested in the whole idea of relying upon doctors and a health system to maintain my health, and I accept my own responsibility for that. But a key part of it is managing your sexual energy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point of, you know, that the cultivation of health and being such a factor in taking responsibility for your own health, your own vitality, you know, and I think that's an important principle for people, especially in this world where we're having healthcare disasters, you know, things like that. And so do you want to speak a little bit about the topic of semen retention? You know, this is something that I was introduced by, you know, reading your book, Taoist Secrets of Love, you know, understanding that for a man, it's not optimal to be ejaculating constantly. And so there's been a large influx of men becoming interested in this through the no-fat movement. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but semen retention is starting to become kind of known in the collective psyche at this point. And I think this represents a great shift in sexuality. So what are some of the benefits for a man in retaining his semen, or at least going longer periods of time without ejaculating versus a man who ejaculates every day?
Okay. What was the name of that movement? You said this making it popular?
No fat, as in
No fat?
Yeah, like fapping is kind of a slang for masturbating. So no fap is kind of the movement. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
I haven't. Okay, that's a new one. Thank you, but maybe that's a different generation. That's you got their own lingo. Their own
Yeah,
lingo.
yeah, totally.
Anyway, uh, yeah, obviously this is a topic I know very well. People for 40 years. For men, it's semen retention. For women, it's retaining their blood instead of releasing it all through their period. But in both cases, women and for men, it's all about retaining what they call your jing, which is kind of like the substance from which you create your body. And so we know, of course, that men and women can combine their essence and create a new body through children. But each one of them has their own individual, unique ways of strengthening that essence. When I was a teenager, very intense sexual feelings, I was probably masturbating like 3 times a day. So it wasn't until 1980, I was like, 29 years old when I met Mantak Chia, and I had read of yogis in the Himalayas being able to, retain their sexual energy, but I kind of had the impression that it took 25 years sitting in a cave to master that. Mm. And I have to give Mantak Chia credit for this. He said, "Oh no, I'll teach you that right away in 5 minutes. What that method's like." So I actually spent a year testing all the sexual methods before I wrote the book. She has never written any books. He's kind of more like a book producer. His English is just not good enough to actually write. Mm. So I really ghost wrote that based on my experience, and I wanted to test it, and I didn't want to put anything out there until I was sure it worked. So, but I did discover, I was quite amazed that I could start to control my kind of level of horniness. That was an amazing, revelation for me, because before I was just basically looking at every female who passed by me on the street or in the office, everywhere. I would kind of mentally undress them and just imagine what their bodies were like, and then what it would be like to make love to them. Now, not all males are this oversexed. An astrologer finally explained it to me. He said, "Oh, I have double that. This is a particular trait of Scorpios, that they can have like X-ray vision and can penetrate in sexually and look at people's kind of sexual energy and their you can say their sexual energy body." So that's what I was doing. And I thought everybody was doing it, but I found out later not everybody is. Anyway, it was taking up a lot of my time. It was kind of distracting. I was spending so much time and energy, always looking at women, always thinking about women, always looking for an outlet for my sexual energy. So when I started doing these Taoist practices and started redirecting the sexual energy internally instead of outwardly in another female, that started to make profound, we'll say, psychic and inner structural changes in me. And for the first time, I felt relieved. I was no longer compulsive about chasing after women. And in fact, I decided to test this out. I took a vow of celibacy for 1 year. So, okay, I'm not going to have sex with anybody, instead of chasing around and having 3 girlfriends at once and that kind of thing. I said, I'm just not going to have sex. I'm just going to work with this method here and see how it goes. What I discovered was that as soon as I decided not to have sex, all these women started chasing after me, wanting to have sex. I couldn't believe it. And it took me a while to realize that women have this very sensitive energetic radar, and they can tell when men are projecting on them. And I was such a strong projector that women would I was like a flamethrower, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is like too intense." And they would run away from me. As soon as I turned the flamethrower off and started circulating the flames internally, women suddenly felt safe around me. And said, "Oh, okay, let me see if this guy has what I want." But I was bound and determined not to break my vow, and I had to literally push all these women away. So That was a kind of surprising, results of that practice. Okay, is that it turned me into kind of a sexual magnet. I think would be an accurate way to put it. Now, I have to warn your viewers, though, that I get a lot of calls and emails from people. Guys just said, "Oh, I just got a new girlfriend. I want to do like Taoist sex and have multi-orgasms with her. I need the quick training in this. How do I do it?" From teaching people over many decades. My style of teaching it evolved to be quite different from Mantak Chia's. I developed a lot of new methods for helping people develop their energy body. I developed a lot of Qigong methods and internal methods, both, to opening up channels first. And I discovered that people who actually take the time and do what I call learn what I call the medical and spiritual Qigong fundamentals, levels 1 and 2, have much more success with the sexual practice if they take a couple of months and work with the 6 healing sounds, the inner smile, and the Wudong red dragon spinning pearl orbit, also just known as a microcosmic orbit. If you work with opening up the organs and your connection to them and these deep channels in the front and back, these are called the fire and water channels, and you have some facility just with managing your normal biological energy, your everyday energy, that's not sexually aroused, you then have in place channels and pathways to direct your sexual energy. If you try and jump right away into pulling up and redirecting your sexual energy and you do not have these channels opened up, you can get problems, sometimes serious problems. Sexual energy can get stuck in different organs, in your head, and different places, and that can be a nightmare. You can get insomnia, you can just get stuck in open up negative emotional patterns. So there's I don't recommend trying to do that. And I put very clear warnings on my website and say, don't take this course until you've done the basics, don't jump into this. And that's ultimately the fastest path. Once you open up those channels, then it's very easy to start managing your sexual energy and redirecting it. So that's a very important caveat here.
Yeah, that was certainly my experience as well. I read Taoist Secrets of Love, and I was like trying to do the big draw, trying to like shove the sexual energy up into my head. And, I had some success with it, but I just ended up with these splitting headaches, and it wasn't a very enjoyable experience. And, once I went to your retreat, I studied your, the basic practices, opening the orbit, clearing out stagnant chi and things like that. All of a sudden the sexual practices became much more effortless having that foundation. So I think that's a great approach in structuring it that way. Now, do you think that semen retention is a safe thing for men to practice if they don't have some sort of energetic tools to work with that energy directly?
Are you talking about men just stopping their ejaculation without having the channels to redirect it? Is that your question?
Because this is kind of becoming again, semen retention is becoming more popular. The no fat movements become very popular. So a lot of men are they're just suppressing their sex drive basically without doing anything to really transmute that energy. What kind of problems do you think they might run into doing that?
I don't recommend that at all. What happens is you just get congestion in the testicle, or the lower abdominal area. Okay, you can push. In fact, I learned a method from Mantak Chia called the $1 million point. You press in on the perineum, and that stops the semen from moving up through to the prostate and then going out to the penis as ejaculate. I absolutely recommend men do not use this method. Okay, it works mechanically. It stops your semen from leaving, but there's no benefit unless you circulate the energy from that semen into the rest of your body. So the health benefits do not come from stopping ejaculation. In fact, I tell my students, don't even use the term stop ejaculation. You should reframe it verbally as I'm recycling or recirculating my sexual energy. You're not stopping anything. If you have this whole thought form of stopping, you're in bad shape. You're now stopping your sexuality. You're stopping your high-level sexual energy, and you're trying to push it down and keep it down there in your sexual genital area. There's no benefit to that. The benefit comes from circulating the sexual energy freely, not just within your own body, but if you have a lover, then exchanging it with her. And not just through the penis, but through every point of contact. Mouth kissing, nipple to nipple, hands to the body, energy, the sexual energy will start to penetrate through all points of contact. But if you have compressed it and held it down in your genital area, you're not getting that. I mean, obviously some of it will still get past that. You cannot stop it all, but you're basically just creating some congestion and some blue balls, and there's no point to it. So I don't use the $1 million point and pressing the semen at all. I teach a much simpler methods of using a lot of what I call testicle breathing. Sometimes it's also called the cool draw. You're like imagine your spine is like a straw and you're sipping up that charged sexual energy, which is coming up out of your testicles, okay? And the idea is to redirect it up the spine or the central channel or the front channel. These are the three main channels in the body, rather than having to go out the penis. So if you are only semi-aroused and you start sipping that sexual energy up and just breathing it up, smiling it up, whatever method works for you to get that redirected, you have no congestion in the testicle area. You never get blue balls, and that sexual energy is now beginning to circulate, okay? And the rest of your organs and your other energy channels will benefit from it. So I just learned this by practicing and noticing and finding out what worked for me. So that's my strong recommendation.
Yeah, and that's been my approach as well. As I'm kind of promoting some of these practices and the concept of recirculating that energy versus just releasing it. There's men who aren't doing the practices, but they're just retaining their semen, and they always have these symptoms of energy stagnancy. They're feeling angry, they're feeling frustrated, irritable, blue balls. So yeah, it's so essential to have a practice like that if you're going to be cultivating your sexual energy. And that brings us to the point of the non-ejaculatory orgasm. I think this is something that holds back a lot of men from practicing sexual cultivation, because it's one thing to be celibate and be able to kind of build this energy by yourself, but it's another thing to be able to engage in sex freely without going back to these old sexual habits. And once men realize they can have orgasms without ejaculating, it's a game changer. Do you want to share some of your insights on maybe what it was like for you transitioning from the sort of traditional sex of ejaculating versus experiencing the circulation of sexual energy internally instead of exploding it out externally?
Well, the number one thing is you have to make a distinction between ejaculation and orgasm. They're not the same thing. Ejaculation is just the physical release of your seed, out your penis, and orgasm is just any part of you that's vibrating with sexual energy. Okay, so once you understand that the two are actually separate, that you can redirect the sexual energy and get your whole body and all your different organs, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, get them all vibrating, that's actually, you're just shifting to a whole body orgasm. Now, that's not usually a rapid transition for most men because they have to practice for a while and open up enough and absorb enough energy to be able to get that vibration in the rest of their body. A lot of men are stuck in their heads and they have this kind of balls to brain thing where they're very aware, very quick, the sexual energy goes up to their brain, but it doesn't circulate to the rest of their body. And so this is why you get the irritability and other things. If you get too much sexual energy in your head and you've got a lot of, and you're very mental and you've got a lot of mental tension, sexual energy will amplify whatever it comes in contact with, which in this case can be mental tension, producing a headache, etc. So this is why it has to be smoothly distributed. Once you understand the difference between ejaculation and orgasm, then it's much simpler to understand that it's really a mechanical process to redirect the ejaculation in order to have the internal, an expanded or more whole body sexual orgasm. So I draw a distinction between three phases of orgasm. One is the genital orgasm, where you feel the pulsation just in your testicles and your penis, which often accompanies, ejaculation. Phase two is you start to feel the vibration, the pulsation more in your organs and your whole body. And then I call that an energetic orgasm. And then phase three is the spiritual orgasm, where that becomes a higher steady state vibration that's going on all the time. And that really involves the interaction of your sexual energy and your spiritual energy, and they're coupling. And so that's what bliss is. So if you're in spiritual bliss, it means you can't have bliss without a physical body. Okay, you're just a spirit. You can't feel the things here because you don't have any blood, you don't have any sexual energy, any hormones. So that requires that interaction. So Taoist or alchemy gives you a way to stabilize that and that interaction. And again, different people have progressed quickly, and some people very slowly, depending on all kinds of factors. The other factor here is, besides separating ejaculation and orgasm, the other factor here is, of course, if you're with a woman, if you have a partner, it is not just twice as complicated, it's maybe more complicated by a factor of 10, because the interactions between your energy body and her energy body and your physical body and your physical body and your spirit body, there's so many levels of interaction there. It's very, let's just say, it's hard to consciously manage. Okay, most people go more or less sort of unconscious, semi-conscious during lovemaking. They're just in a kind of a trance, and they're just, in the kind of the flow of their own sexual energy and the interaction of it, the combustion of it with a woman. So that's much harder to manage. So I recommend to men who are training in the Taoist sexology to train apart from their female partner and learn how to manage it alone, first within your own body, and once you start to feel comfortable with that, and then take that into your sexual relationship. And that doesn't mean you have to stop having sex with your partner during that period. It just means that you may not be recycling your semen, while you're with your partner, but you're going to do that when you're with yourself. And then gradually, as you get control of that process, then you can introduce it in a more effortless way, perhaps with the support of your partner, hopefully with the support, so that then you're not only recirculating your own energy, but you're also absorbing and recirculating the energy of your partner.
Yeah. And I like that point about, it's good to train by yourself. It's almost like it's the equivalent of like jumping into a boxing match without having ever trained. You need to develop some skill before you play with the big boys, right? So I think that's important. One thing I would like to cover is how does sex tie into spirituality? Because a lot of spiritual traditions, they have this approach of just, just suppress your sex drive, just don't deal with it at all, but the Taoist approach is a little different. It's about incorporating it. So do you want to speak on that connection of sex and spirituality?
Oh yeah. Well, I would say most religions rely on suppression, and a lot of other even esoteric paths. But why? Why do they rely on sexual suppression? I mean, they'll say, yeah, fine, get married, have it with, you're going to have sex and have it within a marriage and have kids, it's okay. But it's kind of like a Pandora's box. I mean, there's so much stuff buried in mankind's sexuality and the battle of the sexes and how we divide it into male and female bodies. And, there's a huge wound in humanity that is expressed through the sexual battle and the sexual confusion and sexual diseases. So, sex carries the potential for horrible, terrible diseases and sublimated into aggression and war. Okay. So there's a lot of evidence that war is basically, just kind of national rape, and you want to go fuck the other country. And this is kind of like really brought home when the Russians at the end of World War II, when the Russians were coming into Germany, they raped over 2 million German women. So this is kind of like, oh, you screwed us and you killed a bunch of us, now we're going to go in and rape you. So this is, the religions just basically don't want to get into it. It's like so complicated, so messy. And they don't have the skill set. They don't have any method for managing it. So I can't really blame them. I mean, they're just trying to keep their flock intact and focused on the priest or on their God and not on each other and on their sexual attraction to each other. So the problem is, of course, that if you try and bridge this gap between humanity and heaven, you can say between matter and spirit, many different ways you can, look at that polarity. We'll call it the vertical polarity, okay? The above and the below, heaven and earth. My experience and my conclusion is that you will only be partially successful if you have not dealt with your sexual issues. So basically, we can say sexuality is about the horizontal attraction, and vertical, we have the attraction between spirit and matter. And there's an exchange that's going on there constantly, males and all the females on the planet. So if you try and ignore the major issue of humankind, which is resolving this issue between men and women, you just are missing a lot of the fuel that is available for that interaction between the above and the below. It's like you're suppressing that, you're shutting that off. Okay, well, yeah, you can still have that vertical connection and you can take it deeper, but you're not really feeding your sexual energy into that. So the kind of forced celibacy thing does not automatically mean that your sexual energy gets recycled into that heaven-earth vertical dynamic. And we can see evidence for this in studies of Catholic priests, okay, where they're in forced celibacy, and they have a very high rate of prostate cancer, okay. I think I heard of something like 30% or something, and prostate complications. So if you just suppress sexuality, you get health issues. Your body needs your sexual energy to be healthy, because what is the body? It's 80 trillion cells that are sexually reproducing themselves in each moment. So your body is not a static thing at all. It's a very sexually dynamic thing. And every cell in your body it has a sexual reproductive, process. When that process stops, we call that death. When you stop reproducing yourself. So when your sexual energy is no longer successful, then you're dead. So you can have this kind of disembodied spirituality, this kind of I call it a head enlightenment that doesn't connect your whole body. And, you can be kind of happy there and like, okay, I'm not going to deal with the mess of sexuality. I don't want to look down below inside my own body. I don't want to deal with that shit, man. That is just, I don't know how to handle that. I need to get away from it. I want peace of mind. So, you go in the desert and you climb up on top of a column, you're whatever. You go into a cave, or you live in society, but you're like avoiding sexual interaction. Unless, of course, you're a frustrated Catholic priest and you just start having it, with all your parishioners and, abusing little boys and girls. So it's just not healthy. I mean, suppression just does not work. So this no fap movement here, where they're just suppressing it, is not going to have any great spiritual success, because you need that sexual energy, not only just for your health, but also for your spiritual development at a deep level.
Very insightful. And you know, something you were kind of getting into was the concept of internal sexual alchemy, where you're working with your own sexual energy internally, you know, and I've studied this with you. It's a very powerful practice. Do you want to kind of give a basic overview of what Taoist internal sexual alchemy is and how you've kind of developed it over the decades?
Sure. The thing I discovered is that everybody has got an inner male and an inner female. So this is a very important concept for both sexes to understand. You see it in the personality types. You see some men who are very feminine, and you see some women who are very, very young, very male, very masculine. They might be as tough as a truck driver, or they're running for president, running for Congress. They get into a very young mode. Okay, and some men are just very, very feminine. You see a lot more of this in Asia. You go to Thailand and you go to China, you see a lot of more feminine males. And I've noticed in the sacred and Taoist mountains, where you're going to monasteries and Taoist monasteries and things, you see a lot of very androgynous guys, kind of seem like half male, half female. They seem to actually embody it. But this notion of androgyny, which is your male part and your female part, the basic theory, as I have come to understand it, is that before humans split into separate male and female bodies, we were living in what we call an astral plane, a kind of a slightly more spiritual, faster vibrating plane, where we had integrated male and female together. And that the shift into physicality involved splitting into separate male and female bodies. But it's not an absolute split, like all the male half went in all into the male body and all the female half went into the female body. They both got male and female energies, but in different ratios. So females have a larger yin percentage in general, and the males have a larger yang. And this is imprinted into all their subtle bodies, and as they step themselves down from the soul into a physical body, 9 months in the womb and all these other things. So this is, we could say this is kind of like I believe humanity is a kind of an experiment. It's a spiritual experiment, and that was part of the experiment. So, let's go deeper into matter. This is this astralized human being. So let's go deeper into matter, into physicality, and then we'll have to separate into separate bodies to do this. And then that's when we shifted from immortality into mortality. So once you separate the two bodies, then they had shorter lifespan, and they didn't have you need the yin and the yang energy, as well as the energy from the source, they call original chi or original breath, in order to sustain a long life. And in the astral plane, we had all three, so we could live maybe thousands of years, just by analogy. And we could just rebirth ourselves, because we had all three currents of energy. But once we separated into separate bodies, then we had such a shortage of original breath. This kind of a neutral buffer, the male and female, the yin and the yang. It was hard to sustain a life here for very long. So this yin-yang balance is essential to longevity. So in the beginning, you're just trying to manage your sexual energy, I call that outer sexual alchemy. And when you get into your inner female, you're coupling the two, you're having internal sex. It's called intercourse, INNER course, instead of intercourse, which is between an outer male and a male aspects. So I've developed methods to identify both halves of yourself and cultivate them and couple them. And that lays the groundwork for the birth of what they call the immortal embryo and your inner sage, which is the vessel ultimately for higher spiritual development. I can't, it's too complex to try and teach you in 2 minutes here, but I think that's a kind of a good thumbnail sketch.
Yeah, it's great. It's perfect. And, just a testament. It's a very, very powerful practice. Just studying the first level, Lesser Khan and Lee, I found my whole dynamic of interacting with other people, my relationships, the opposite sex, just completely changed. So it's a very, very powerful process, definitely. And let's see, the last thing I really wanted to go over with you is the subject of porn addiction. So this is something that's become quite a problem here. I think it's like estimated like something like 10 to 20% of men are addicted to porn. There's so many psychological, emotional issues that arise from regular porn usage. Do you want to speak to this issue a little bit? Like, if you have any insight with this sort of thing?
I probably have a few thoughts about that. You have to understand that this is not merely a kind of psychological issue, and can not merely be solved by, getting on the couch with your therapist and talking about it. This is a problem that is caused by what I call the internet sex beast. And this is a collective of low astral entities. You can call them spiritual because they're not in physical bodies, but just because they're spiritual doesn't mean they have good intent. Essentially, they have a dark intent. They're parasites. And they don't have all three streams of the life force, so they're parasites. They have to feed on our energy in order to survive. And they use internet sites, and they use people's sexual energy as a way for them to survive. And so this is really how people are getting addicted. They go to a site and these astral entities are hanging out there waiting for you to stimulate yourself, and then they're going to start feeding your sexual energy. But sexual energy is very binding. It's like super glue. So you bond to that site and to that image and to that process there. And so they want you to come back again and again and again so they can feed again and again and again. So just think of them as like little astral piranha. And they're just, they're just feeding, eating you. Most of your sexual energy that you're stimulating is unconscious, and they say you don't need it. And so you're just wasting it. And so they're making good use of it, and they're feeding themselves and staying alive. But meanwhile, you're addicted, you're hooked, and you've got to keep giving your energy to keep getting this high. And they kind of feed some of it back to you, and they make this loop between themselves and you so that you get bonded to them. Okay, so it's not just the image that you're looking at of some sexual woman, and of course now more and more women are also getting addicted to porn as well. Mm-hmm. But it's initially and maybe still primarily more male and female. But this internet sex beast is incredibly powerful, maybe one of the most powerful entities on earth. You have to understand that the internet, even though it was developed by military and university types, it did not get commercialized until the porn operators began to fund its development. So they put the money in for its development. And I've read statistics that maybe half the internet use is for porn. So it's still a huge, huge percentage of the internet use. And so the amount of sexual energy that's being fed into this collective internet sex beast is just huge. And, you can say on one hand, okay, it's better than having everybody, like in the old days, suppressed and nobody could, get what they wanted, or they couldn't see naked bodies or all bodies of people from other cultures and other races. I mean, yeah, it's served in a certain sense to liberate people. You say, oh, I can look at anything I want, okay? And I can just see it now. So it's taking the fig leaf off of that Adam and Eve thing. But on the other hand, it's hooked people into this terrible addiction. And the only cure for it is to do, from my point of view, Taoist practices that when you become aware of it and you get control of your sexual energy, you start recirculating the sexual energy, you start connecting it into your heart, and instead of projecting it out into some outer space image where, you know, it's not going to go into the TV or computer screen. That's an illusion. You think you're giving it to, you know, that image of that woman there you see. No, it's going to the sex beast. So you have to take it back, take control of it, redirect it. And so whenever you masturbate, I'm not opposed to masturbation. I'm not opposed to self-stimulation and having sexual fantasies, but you want to direct them internally so that you get the benefit of it and you don't feed it to the internet sex beast. This is very important. I can't emphasize it enough. And I've had direct experiences because I work at a high level, you know, of meditation. And I've had contact with this internet sex beast. It is horrible. It's really horrible energy. You don't want to meet it. It was probably one of the worst experiences of my life. It took me 6 weeks to get its energy, to get rid of its energy once I encountered it.
Wow.
So trust me, it's real.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you know, that's interesting things because, you know, men are always reaching out to me about this because I speak about this issue a lot. And, you know, I give some general advice, but the thing for me was that once I started doing these practices, it was like naturally I just became aware of how unhealthy that pattern was. And it just became effortless to just let go of it because I was, again, starting to recirculate my energy internally. So any closing thoughts, Michael? How can we stay balanced? You know, this whole coronavirus epidemic, there's so much fear, there's so much chaos in the world. What advice do you have for people to hold their center and stay balanced in these times?
Well, first of all, I want to say that many men, like myself, are initially attracted to the Taoist sexual practices as if that's the main thing they want to learn. They just want to like somehow improve their sexual life or their sexual energy. And the pattern is, though, that after people start working with their sexual energy and they start getting into it, they realize, oh, this is actually just part of my whole chi field, and I have to cultivate my whole energy body, not just my sexual energy, because that sexual energy is interacting with all the rest of you. And so that's a very normal progression, okay? There's nothing wrong with like, oh yeah, let me just check this out for sexual reasons. But I can just tell you, I've seen it so many times, where the guy is just like, oh, this actually is a whole path that I could get into. And, you know, it's for my whole life, all parts of me, not just my sexual, you know, life.
That was definitely my experience. Yeah.
The benefits are huge on all levels. And so it becomes the whole life path. And, you know, the reason the path is, I switched paths from the Kundalini yoga. I was in Kriya yoga. I've studied, you know, Sufism and esoteric Christianity and Zen Buddhism and Tibetan Tantra and, you know, everything. I'm like a total modern eclectic type of guy. But now I realize that this Taoist path actually has got the basic structure of everything I need. And I borrow things, I pull things in from other systems, but I have a place to put them now. And so I don't need to go chasing around, you know, and the path is very well suited for Westerners because it's about following yourself. It's not about following a master or, you know, a guru or somebody else. It's, you know, your Tao is your life. That's your own life. You can't really have someone else unfold for you. There may be some pseudo Taoists, you know, who are trying to capitalize on the master. A lot of the Chinese do this. They won't need them. Yes, you just need the method. Okay, so that's the most important thing. And this path is designed for you to develop in between your inner male and your inner female. You're developing, expanding your core channel, expanding what is essentially it's called the neutral breath, the original breath of life that's coming from source. And the more you expand that, the less obsessed you are with male female because the middle neutral has expanded. You know, so some part of you spiritually becomes androgynous. It doesn't threaten your sexual identity. You're still, if you're a male, you want to, you know, like I'm still like only interested in women. I'm not, you know, I didn't become gay because I became more androgynous. I just became more neutral about it all and able to see it from a more detached space. So it's the same thing about with everything in your life, though. Coronavirus, death, I mean, and that's really what the fear is here, is of death. So when you cultivate inner alchemy, you lose your fear of death because you're crossing the boundary line all the time. You're going into the inner planes, which is where you go after death. So yeah, I have lost all my fear of death. So coronavirus has no fear for me. I have no fear for it. Okay. And I also developed a strong energy body, so I know the pathogens are not going to enter my body, and just like I never get sick. So why am I going to get sick from this one? Okay, and if I do, I'll be able to push it out more quickly. Okay, than others. So that's just been my experience. I have a young kid, and of course, kids transmit viruses and bacteria all the time, and their parents get sick all the time from them. I don't get sick from my kid. Okay. My wife does. She's half my age and she hasn't developed the same neutral force yet. And I also have a strong metal constitution, so I tend to deflect things. So the point is that you're not cultivating just for the coronavirus or just for sex. I mean, you're cultivating it for whatever comes along in your life. And you need all three forces, the male, the female, and the source chi, the yuan chi. You need them all. And that's the creative play of life, is between those three forces. And so ultimately, this is about expanding your creativity and your sense of causality. The more yuan chi you have, the more causal you become. The more this original force source chi you have, you can shape the yin and the yang forces to create the life you truly need. I think that's the important message here.
Beautiful. Thanks for the insight, and thank you so much for joining me, Michael. Always great to hear your wisdom. So you teach some summer retreats, you teach some different workshops. Where can people find your work?
HealingDaoUSA.com. Dao is spelled T-A-O. Healing, HealingTao USA.com. Healing Dao USA, or just type my name in retreats. I'm sure you'll find me. Okay.
Awesome.
5 weeks of retreats. Yeah, we have 5 weeks of retreats. They're very inexpensive. I kept the tuition down. It's $550 a week tuition. People stay in Airbnbs and spend as much as you want on housing and food. And yeah, they're fantastic. They're intimate. They're small, but they're really high energy, and people have amazing transformations. I think you can probably speak to that better than me.
Yeah. Highly encourage you guys to go. Incredible retreats. I've had life-changing experiences at them. Michael's also got some great home study materials. I'll put the website in the description of this video. So thank you so much for joining me, Michael, and take care.